Alright, and welcome to another video. I'm Mike, and I'm going to talk to you today about railroading. I touched on this a bit last week in my overall philosophy of gaming, specifically about running games as a DM. Um, but I wanted to talk more about this because it's something that I feel is easy for newer DMs to do and really, really disruptive to an enjoyable experience. Let's talk a little bit about what railroading means, especially if you didn't see last week's video. Railroading is when you, as the game master, put the story on rails. You have a specific vision of what is going to happen, and anything your players do that attempt to go a different direction or not follow your carefully laid out plot, you don't let it happen. You force them to stay on the tracks and keep going in one very specific direction. Um, I saw a great example of someone explaining railroading as walking up to a creepy house and the door is swinging open and your characters know that inside they have to investigate a missing person. And they go, well, let's go around the back of the house. Okay, you go around the back of the house and there's no windows or doors. Okay. Well, you said there was a second story. Are there windows there? Well, yeah, there's windows there. Can I? Is there a tree near enough that I can climb up and go into one of the second story windows? No, no, you definitely can't do that. What about a ladder? No, no ladders. Okay, We're gonna try and stand on each other's shoulders so that we can reach that second floor. Oh yeah, you're able to stand on each other's. It's really tall though. It's taller than you guys can reach. It just no. And so eventually the player's like, I go in the front door. So now, as a player, what this does to you is you feel like you have no agency. You're not making any choices. Your character can't do what your character would naturally do. This is a feel bad moment in games. When you want to do something, but you can't. There are many reasons why. Sometimes it's the rules, sometimes your character just isn't high enough level yet. But when you have no reason laid in front of you that makes sense, except for, oh well, that's how I planned it. That's how I wanted the story to go. Like it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like you're playing a game. You might as well just let the dungeon master run your characters and listen to them explain a story for 2 hours or 4 hours or however long it is your session lasts. And that could be really fun. I know some storytellers who could definitely pull that off. I would sit there and listen to them. Um, but as a player, you're not there to listen to a story. You're there to interact. So, as a DM, you have to be careful to make sure that your game is still interactive. Don't let your plot ruin the game because you want your players to enjoy this, not slog through it to get to the end. Well, you want us to be prepared, says new DMs. Everyone said, make sure you're prepared, make sure you're prepared. I've done so much studying. I've written maps, I've written riddles, I've done all of this planning, and I don't get to use it all because they want to go, like, bust open the back door of the house instead of going into the living room where there's like a pit trap and there's all these, bats that are going to come out of the fireplace. And no, no, it's okay. You don't have to give up all of those things just because they go around the back of the house, for example. I gave a good example, I think, in my last video of avoiding railroading by redirecting in my last video. If you haven't seen it, pause and go watch. So I'll give a quick summary, but like, go watch. It's the story about the characters who were supposed to go flee south from an oncoming danger and ended up going north. All right, you back with me? Okay. So redirecting, what I call redirecting, is where you take an element of your story that you intended to happen first. You intended it to happen in the orchard or the living room. Your players don't know that. Move it. Now it takes place in a cornfield. Now it takes place, the opposite direction on the other side of town. Let them go in the back door. The kitchen, no, there's nothing really much in the kitchen. You find some old rusty silverware. There's 2 doors. Which one do you go through? Oh, you go through that one? It leads to a hallway. At the end of the hallway, you see the front door flapping open. Oh, okay. Now you're coming from this direction. You end up in the living room anyway. Did you have something planned for the kitchen that has to happen after the living room? Well, maybe if it's a creepy supernatural haunted house, things aren't disturbed until they go to the living room. When they go to the living room, that's what activates everything around the house. Right? Okay. So now there's like this little just extra thing you didn't even think of. And it's cool. So just allow yourself to be flexible. You don't have to get rid of anything you've prepared just because your players are uncooperative to a degree. In the example I mentioned of redirecting, I had to use something called an invisible wall. I had railroad. I had to, because it just didn't work any other way. That's another type of railroading that happens. The invisible wall. Basically, you tell your players that there's an area so dangerous that if they go there, they will die. You can do this by literally just saying that. You can do that by putting monsters up that they go to have their first night of travel into this new land, and a random encounter with some monster almost kills them, and they turn back, because if that's the first thing we saw, imagine once we got to the dungeon, right? So invisible walls are another type of railroading that aren't quite as obvious, right? So this is something where it's going to come down to your players whether or not it's something you can utilize. Sometimes players don't mind that. They don't mind that there's an area that's kind of off limits. And especially if you make it seem like their decision, it's better to have some decision. It's better to fight the monsters that will almost kill them and then they decide to come back, than if you're like, no, it's so dangerous that if you go here, you die. And pulling it back, no, you're just not allowed to. Keep giving them choices. The more choice you can give them, the less it feels like you are forcing them to go in a certain direction. And it's easy to give choices that aren't really choices. As a DM, as a game master, give them choices that end up leading back to where you want to tell the story anyways, just from different angles. And then your players have agency. They get to choose how they get there. They don't know that it was all going to lead to Constantinople. They don't, because you haven't told them that. They're not reading your notes. They don't see that you don't have 3 different other possibilities. They don't see that you don't have 2 major villains or 10 encounters that they might run into. You only have 2 or 3. So when they make a choice, and it leads to this well-prepared encounter, whether that's what, you intended it to be or not. They don't know. And so you're going to have this great experience because it feels like they chose the options that got them to this great story that you have prepared for them. And to me, that's the essence of gaming. Um, so avoid railroading, but don't think that it means giving up on the choices and preparation that you've made as a DM. You can still do everything you want to do by just giving even the illusion of choice. And if you have well thought out choices that have well thought out paths to the same solution, even better. Like that's amazing. That can be incredibly satisfying, um, both as a DM and as a player to experience. So be prepared, have your game ready, tell the story you want, but remember, your players want to be a part of it, and that's important. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully, you'll be here for my next video. Please like and subscribe.